Rats, they have us outnumbered. It's estimated that Sydney alone has a rat and mouse population over 500 million. Introduced to Australia in the late 1800s by European settlers, they are now everywhere, eating our rubbish, breeding in our buildings and running through our streets. There is now a new way of monitoring and managing rat activity. Rodenthor Digital ensures continual monitoring in a fast, green, effective method and in real time. It is an easy 4-step process: monitoring and detect, send an email to notify immediately, document and report activity, treat using preferred bait stations, baits and traps. Steve Broadbent, Insistex Regional Director of Australia, Southeast Asia, South Africa and Gulf region, tells us more.
This is a sort of a project that's developed where we're the Australian agents for Green Trap Online. That's why we say Rodenthor Digital, powered by Green Trap Online. As we already mentioned, the main focus of this evening's talk, or this afternoon's talk, for those of you in WA, is permanent and intelligent remote monitoring of rodents using the Rodenthor Digital, powered by the Green Trap Online system. This forms an overall part of our greening of the Insistex business and working towards more sustainable pest control options. And we have a range of other systems and concepts in rodent management, right the way through to one new active ingredient for the industry and one new active ingredient for us in our development pathway that we'll be bringing to you over the next 1 to 3 years. And I think we've got some exciting things to move us away from the traditional use of second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides and give us much more options for a greener future. This, of course, links into what I hope you've all heard about, which is the new award through the Sustainability Award, through the Australian Environmental Pest Management Association, which has been sponsored by Insistex. And we like to think that this is going to be one of the more important annual awards for pest control companies to strive for. And those of you who are committed to a greener future, we hope you will look at entering the competition and, perhaps be the winner. So rodents and what's the problems? Early warning, of course. The thing with rodents, perhaps more than many other pests, is they can, particularly for businesses, which is going to be our main target market rather than residential rodent control, is they do significant damage, but they also can cause headlines that major companies would prefer we didn't see. You can see over there, disgusting Perth restaurant. That was a Chinese restaurant in Perth. Disgusting rodent problems. They got fined $100,000. The dumpling business fined for food safety breaches in New South Wales. They had fines totaling $110,000. Then you can see Nando's out in Western Australia again with a $12,000 fine, and the Kentucky at Brighton in Kentucky Fried Chicken, or KFC in Brighton, with a $10,000 fine for Brighton. So the costs of not complying with rodent management to businesses are large, both in terms of the financial costs of any action that's taken against them, because they've got their legal costs on that, but of course the ill will that can flow to their businesses as a consequence. And what the Rodenthor Digital system allows us for is to improve those standards. We see that the target markets, as I say, are going to be largely commercial, in that we're going to be looking at food, beverage outlets, pharmaceutical plants, dairies, medical centers, hospitals, cosmetics manufacturers, large storage and warehousing facilities, facilities management companies, restaurants, hotels, through to universities and schools. So what is the difference between what we might call traditional pest control and digitally enabled pest control, where the idea is to work smarter, not harder? So typically, when we're doing rodent inspections, traditionally, we're going to go out there 8 to 12 times per annum, and we're going to check the stations. And I'm sure you knew better than I, but most of the time when we check the station, we don't find anything's happened. One could argue that that's a lot of wasted time checking stations that don't need to be changed, where there's no activity. And also this concept of always putting out toxic baits in such stations. It's both expensive, but it's not good for the environment to be having those toxic baits if we don't need them. When we move to digital pest control, we can literally be monitoring that station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And we now open up the option of using breakback traps instead of baits at all, of using non-toxic baits. And that's some of the areas we will be supporting Green Trap Online with some non-toxic options. And then when you know you've got rodent activity, you can come in with the toxic baits. In the traditional mode, you do your service report based on your periodic inspection, whereas with the digital, it's constantly reporting. It lets you know whether it's working, it lets you know when something's happened. You've got a 24/7 system that's there online to see exactly what's been happening and when. The use of rodenticides does have negative effects on the environment, and therefore, as we've already explained, I guess you can have a much more non-toxic approach using these digital systems. And in Europe, they're very big because rodenticide use is very much restricted in Europe, and companies have been able to move to digital management of trapping systems with very effective results. And we get slow or random detection of rodents in a traditional pest control. Obviously, rodents would come the day after you've done your inspection, and it could be 4 to 6 weeks before you know about it. Whereas with the digital system, as soon as those rodents enter the premises, you're going to pick them up. IFS is a major auditing company for the food industry. They audit HACCP sites, hazard analysis at critical control point, which is widely used in the food industry to protect proactively against not only pest infestations, but hygiene problems and the like. And it's very noticeable that in Europe, which has led the way here, and that's why we're partnered with a European company in this business. And to quote from the report there, their latest pest control guideline to their client companies in Europe and around the world, they note that a growing number of their certified sites have successfully implemented these tools, referring to digital tools. And as a result, rodent infestations are detected a lot earlier and actions can be taken quicker and more efficiently. These control actions can then include all available tools, including the use of biocides. Targeted, intensive, but short measures can prevent further spreading and reduce the overall application of baits and traps in the long term. If we're doing a normal traditional method, basically what we're saying, if rodents come in, we've done our visit, the rodents come in, those rodents can be breeding and multiplying until we come the next time. Whereas if we've got a digital system, we're going to pick them up much quicker, allowing us to come in sooner and solve the problem sooner. And so we're increasingly seeing this happening overseas, with the industries moving from manual checking to automatic, non-toxic and more efficient inspections. You can monitor these systems with your mobile phone, with your iPad or tablet, or on, of course, your computer. What the Green Trap Online system allows you to do is use that data intelligently to improve your pest strategy, and it allows you to create these heat maps. What this heat map is doing is it's showing where we're seeing the most rodent activity. So obviously the old red is the hottest spots. This is where we're mostly seeing rodents. The blue is where we're least seeing rodents. And so with that information, we can more effectively target our inspections and also our placement of baits. When we move into the communication area, and there have been a range of communication systems that have been on the market in the past that have got their strengths and weaknesses. We believe, because we've been into this market before, because we've been looking at it for a number of years, that the system offered by Green Trap Online is definitely the best system. Bluetooth, great system, but really you've only got a reach of 20 meters. So your big problem with Bluetooth is you've got to be on the site to do your reading. So it really defeats the purpose of being an automated system, because you've got to turn up on the site to get a reading. So You're not getting 24/7 monitoring. You're only getting a report when you physically visit the site. Wi-Fi, problem with Wi-Fi is security concerns. They can get hacked into Wi-Fi systems. You'll find that when we started with a Wi-Fi system, before we partnered with Greentrap, the problem with Wi-Fi we found was most of your manufacturing facilities will not allow you to use their facilities, so you've got to put your own system in. Then we have a range of other systems that are being used in the market, N-Ocean, Sigfox, Zigbee. The problem with these is they're all private use networks, so they've got very limited data coverage. 4G, of course, it's everywhere because we're now using Telstra or Optus or whoever you might be wanting to connect with. The way our system works is it will connect to any of the networks in Australia, whatever's the strongest network, our system will link to. So straight away, by moving away from these things like Sigfox, Zigbee, etc., we've got coverage basically wherever there's a mobile signal, the system has got coverage, and nothing can offer that sort of coverage. So the system consists of a gateway to connect to the internet and a sensor to tell you, have we got rodent activity or not? And then our communication, as I just indicated, we use LoRa, which is a private network system. And this is used to connect between the gateway and the sensor only. The reason that we do this is it maintains a more cost-efficient structure. There are some systems out there in Europe where each station has a 4G SIM card. And that's a very good system, but it puts your costs up quite significantly. By using the LoRa network, we've got the same efficiencies, but we're only now needing to use one SIM card to connect to the internet. It means it's a lot easier to set the overall system up, and it keeps the costs down. So LoRa is a private network system. It's highly secure. It's what we call a low energy system. It doesn't use a lot of power. It doesn't use a lot of data. And this is shown up by the fact that we have a lithium battery in the system that will last for, in general, about 7 years. So you're never going to have a problem with the battery power or the power in this system. And this is used to communicate, as I say, between the sensors and the gateway. The gateway contains, amongst other digital components, it contains a modem for connecting to the 4G network. And as I say, it's not tied to any one phone system in Australia. So if you're in an area where there's a Telstra network, it will connect to that. If you're in an area where there's only an Optus signal, it will connect to that, whichever is the strongest signal. Again, 4G, as you know, it's why it's taken over the world with our mobile phones, low in power consumption. We've got a wide area network. It's fast communication. And so the data from the sensors is processed by the gateway and sent into our cloud server using the 4G phone network. And it's suitable for deep penetration sites, and it's secure transmission. The Greentrap system was developed in Denmark. It's been used in Europe since 2005, which means what we've got here is a very proven system. We've got a very stable system, but we're not using 2005 technology. The system is being constantly developed and improved to give the optimal system in the market today, or at least we believe the optimal system. And the LoRa component was introduced in 2019, and Morten could tell us how many thousands of these sensors are installed around Europe, but it's an enormous number. So the sensors themselves, and this is what I really liked about this system, the sensors can detect both movement and vibration. They detect movement by an infrared PR sensor, so it's not a video, but it's just if you moved your hand in front of the sensor, that would be enough to fire off the sensor. I think this is great because a lot of the systems, including some very good ones, they're only set up for working with breakback traps. And I think in Australia in particular, and in many other markets, we want more than just to be able to put out breakback traps. We want to be able to do monitoring of bait stations and knowing what's going on. We want to be able to use non-toxic baits and lures. We don't want to be tied to just one system. And so you can set up the green trap system so that we monitor for either movement or vibration or both. And you might say, why would you not need both? And the answer is, if you've got an area, for example, where you've got a lot of vibration, say at the door where forklift trucks are going by, then you might want to switch the vibration off to avoid false call outs. So it allows us to monitor for catch. If we're using a breakback trap, we're going to detect both motion of the rodent and vibration. It allows us to detect for just rodent activity. Again, if you were using a breakback trap and you only got activity, then you know that your rodent you've got rodents around, you know they've gone into the trap, but they haven't fired the trap off, but you know you need to address the matter. If you get vibration only, but you don't see movement, then it's most likely your trap's gone off and you haven't caught a rodent, but your trap now needs to be recharged, and you need to make sure you set your trap up correctly. And the system, of course, will also tell you if the sensor is not working. So basically, the system will monitor and detect the presence of rodents. It will then send a signal to the gateway. The gateway will send the signal over the 4G network, and it will allow you to, it will then send an email to you, which Andrew will show you. And so you will know as soon as there's been activity. You can change the settings on that. You can tell it, don't tell me about catching a rodent at 2 a.m. in the morning. I'd like to know at 7 a.m., not be woken up in the middle of the night. So you've got lots of options in how it comes through in reporting it, and then it will document it, and you can use that document to create graphs, to create heat maps that we showed you, and then you can go in and diagnose what's happening with a solid data set behind you for setting up your treatment. It's a very versatile sensor because basically it can be used with any rodent station that you've got. Obviously, we're targeting it for people to use it with our stations, and it can be used with all our rodent stations, and but it can be used with basically any station that's in the market today. So you don't have to go out and buy new stations as you do with some systems. This system will work with your station. So in summary, the benefits of Rodenthor Digital are we have early warning and quick treatment. We can avoid the risks of heavy infestations and the associated consequences. We can reduce our use of rodenticides. We can speed up root cause analysis and know what's going on and act more effectively. We can reduce our labor costs because we don't have to go to the factory so frequently because we know what's going on. We can go when we need to. We can monitor difficult to reach areas, you know, those sort of crawl spaces that are very difficult to get into or where cabling is. One of the options with the sensor is you don't actually even have to put the sensor in a station. So, for example, we know these are being used in banks where they've got cabling, and they'll just mount them on a bracket above the cabling, and that will detect through the motion sensor whether you've got rodents in that cabling, so that you can get onto it if it happens. All this means less business disruption, and the system does the documentation with intelligent reporting, and you can analyze that data and help your client improve themselves for audit readiness. The other important thing that we always get asked about, of course, is data protection and data security. And that has been very rigorously checked. Morton's paid for hackers to try and hack into the system. And based on what they did and what they tried, he strengthened the system. And I know at least one major pest control company, global pest control company, is using this system, having thoroughly checked out the data protection offered by it. It's using the Microsoft Azure, so really, you know, we're talking brand name quality with Microsoft. which provides the highest security of communication in the cloud. It meets the international standard 27001. The GSM network, that's why we use it for mobile phones. It's high security. The LoRa is a private network. It can't hack into a private network, so for the communication on site. And there is no geolocation data. Some of these systems have geolocation data. You could argue that's good, and in some cases it might be, but our experience has been most factories don't want third parties to know what's going on at their site or where the things might be. We've had an inquiry from the Defence Force, and they certainly don't want it. So there is no geolocation data issued by the system. You can do a map of the factory showing where you've placed things for your knowledge, but it's not done by geolocation.